Zalika was a quiet woman, known in her town of Mbale for her beautiful sewing and calm nature. She spent most of her days working with fabrics, dreaming of a peaceful life. But something had been troubling her for weeks. Her husband, Omari, had started coming home late, smelling of lies and secrets. One night, she finally asked him where he had been. She wasn't shouting. She didn't accuse him. She just wanted the truth. But instead of answering, Omari's face changed. His eyes filled with anger. And then, without a word, he kicked her. Hard. She tumbled down the cold concrete stairs of their home. She hit the ground with a thud, pain shooting through her body like fire. As she lay there, confused and hurt, she looked up, and saw something even colder than the floor. Omari's sister was standing at the top of the stairs, watching. She didn't rush to help. She didn't scream. She smiled. A cold, cruel smirk. In that moment, Zalika realized this wasn't just anger. This wasn't just a fight. Omari hadn't pushed her in a moment of rage, he had tried to erase her. To silence her. To break her completely. But what he didn't know was that Zalika was stronger than she looked. Lying there in pain, something inside her woke up. She wasn't just going to survive. She was going to fight. And she was going to bring the truth with her. Zalika lay still on the ground at the bottom of the stairs, her body hurting in every place, but her mind was wide awake. She could hear footsteps, shouting, and the rush of neighbors running toward her. Someone screamed her name. Another called for help. But Zalika didn't move. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. She closed her eyes and let her body stay limp. Not because the pain wasn't real, it was, but because she had to think. She had to stay quiet and smart. If she reacted too soon, if she opened her eyes and stood up, Omari would know she wasn't broken. And she needed him to believe she was. She knew this wasn't just about a marriage problem. This wasn't only about cheating or lies. No. There was something much darker happening. The way he pushed her, the cold smile on his sister's face, it all told her that this was bigger than a fight. Omari had wanted to shut her up. He had wanted her gone. Dead even. And for what? What was he so afraid of? Why would he choose violence over answering a simple question? Zalika remembered the strange USB drive she found days earlier while cleaning. It was marked, confidential, do not touch. She had made a copy out of curiosity, not even knowing why. But now, lying on the ground, she felt in her heart that the answer was on that drive. She stayed down a little longer as hands lifted her carefully. Some neighbors whispered, thinking she had fainted. Others said they saw Omari run back inside as soon as she fell. No one mentioned the sister. No one knew what really happened, not yet. Zalika let them believe she was unconscious, because in that moment, silence gave her safety. It gave her time to plan. As she was carried to a neighbor's home, she kept her eyes half shut and her thoughts racing. She would not let fear win. She would not let this be the end. Later, when she was alone, she opened her eyes fully and took slow, painful breaths. Every part of her body hurt, but her mind was clear. She remembered where she had hidden the copied USB. She needed to see what was on it. Whatever it was, it had to be important, important enough for a man to risk everything, even his wife's life. Zalika knew one thing now, Omari had secrets. Dangerous ones. And somehow, she was part of them, not as his partner, but as his pawn. But not anymore. She was done being quiet. She was done being used. The fall didn't break her. It woke her up. She wasn't just going to find out the truth, she was going to use it. Not with anger. Not with revenge. But with calm, careful, burning strategy. Zalika had always been seen as the quiet one, the soft one, the woman who just sewed dresses and smiled. But they forgot something important, even the quietest woman can make the loudest change when she has the truth in her hands. And Zalika? She was about to stand up, not just from the ground, but for herself. For every woman like her. A few days before everything fell apart, Zalika was doing what she always did, cleaning the house in silence, trying to ignore the strange feeling that had been growing in her chest. Omari had been acting differently for weeks. He came home late, avoided eye contact, and spoke to her with sharp, careless words. But Zalika stayed quiet, observing. She didn't want to start a fight, but her heart told her something wasn't right. That day, as she wiped down his desk, something caught her eye, a small black USB drive hidden beneath a folder. It had a label stuck to it, confidential, do not touch in capital red letters. Her fingers froze for a second. Why would he hide something like that? She glanced around the room. Omari wasn't home. She took a deep breath, plugged the USB into her old sewing laptop, and quickly copied everything onto it. She didn't even open the files that day, just saved the copy in a folder disguised with a boring name, Sewing Orders 2022. Then she carefully put the USB back where she found it. Her hands were shaking a little, but she acted like nothing happened. She didn't know why she did it, but something inside her said it would be important. And that voice was right. On the night Omari kicked her down the stairs, everything changed. As she lay on the ground, pretending to faint while neighbors gathered around her, her mind was racing. Later, when she was finally alone, hurting and bruised, she remembered the copied USB and opened the files. Her eyes widened with every click. Inside were fake land documents, bribe emails, and false bank records, all in her name. Omari had used her ID, her signature, her face, everything, to build lies. She was shocked to see messages between him and a politician in Succa. They were planning deals, moving money, and using Zalika as the front for all of it. She had no idea any of this was happening. Her name was everywhere, but she had never signed a single thing. Zalika felt a cold anger rising inside her. Omari hadn't just lied to her. He had built his entire scheme around her. He thought she was too soft to notice. Too quiet to ask questions. Too loyal to ever fight back. But the biggest mistake he made wasn't the lies or even the violence. It was something much smaller. He didn't check her pockets. He didn't know she had made a copy. He didn't know that the woman he pushed down the stairs had already picked up the key to his downfall. He thought she was weak. But Zalika wasn't weak, she was patient. She was watching. And now, she had proof. The truth wasn't just in her heart anymore. It was in her hands. She didn't need to scream. She didn't need revenge. All she needed was the right time to act, and it was coming soon. When Zalika finally opened the copied USB, her hands trembled. She sat alone in a small corner of the house, bruised and hurting from the fall, but determined to find out the truth. She didn't know what she expected to see, but what she found shocked her. The drive didn't just hold secrets, it held fire. Inside were dozens of files. She saw emails written between Omari and someone whose name she recognized, a politician from Succa, a man often on the local news. The messages spoke in codes, but the meaning was clear: bribes, stolen money, fake land deals. They were planning everything quietly, behind the scenes, using someone else's name to cover their tracks. That someone else was Zalika. She saw forged land documents with her name printed neatly on them. Fake bank accounts created using her ID. Her photo. Her signature. It felt like a punch to the chest. She had never signed anything, never agreed to any of this. Yet on paper, she was the owner of land she had never seen and the receiver of money she had never touched. Omari had used her not just as his wife, but as his mask. He made her look like the mastermind behind it all, while he stayed in the shadows. Zalika's heart raced as she kept reading. There were scanned letters with official stamps, deals worth millions, all connected to her name. If this information got out the wrong way, she could be blamed. She could be arrested, shamed, ruined. But now, with the truth in front of her, she saw it differently. Omari had tried to erase her, but he had actually handed her a weapon. Every file on that USB was a piece of the puzzle, a part of the story that would destroy his lies. He thought she would stay quiet. He thought no one would believe her. But Zalika now had proof. She remembered all the times he had looked her in the eye and lied. All the nights he came home late, telling stories she knew weren't true. All the times he told her she was just a wife, just a woman, as if she was too small to matter. But here she was, holding everything. The drive in her hands was more than digital files, it was power. It was truth. And truth was louder than all his lies. She wasn't angry in the way people shout and break things. Her anger was calm, clear, and focused. Omari had used her name to build a world of lies. But now, Zalika would use her name to bring the truth to light. He made one mistake, he thought she would never find out. But she did. And now that she knew, she wasn't going to run. She wasn't going to cry. She was going to act. Because Zalika wasn't just his wife. She was the one thing he never expected, his ending. A week after the night that changed everything, Zalika stood in front of the local courthouse. The sun was hot above her head, and her legs still ached with every step. She leaned on a wooden crutch, one that a kind neighbor had carved for her after seeing her struggle to walk. Her face was still bruised, and her arm wrapped in cloth, but there was something powerful in her eyes, something unshakable. This wasn't just a woman showing up to tell her story. This was a woman carrying the truth that could burn everything down. In her bag was the USB drive. Not the original one, she had kept that hidden, but the copy. The one she had opened after the fall. The one that had shown her how deep Omari's betrayal went. She walked slowly into the courtroom lobby, her heart pounding but her mind clear. This was the moment. She wasn't scared anymore. She wasn't confused. She was ready. Waiting inside was her old friend, Daniel, a lawyer she had known since childhood. He had once told her, "If you ever need someone to stand for you, call me." And now, she had. She handed him the USB, her fingers shaking just a little. "Everything's in there," she whispered. "All the lies. All the names. All the documents. He used me, Daniel. He used my name for everything." Daniel's eyes widened as he plugged the USB into his laptop, scrolling through folder after folder of evidence. "Zalika, this is enough to start a full investigation," he said. "This isn't small. This is serious crime." Zalika nodded, her lips tight. "He thought he buried me," she said softly. "But he planted me." The next hour was a blur, filing the report, submitting the evidence, signing statements. Each signature felt like a small victory, a piece of herself that she was taking back. The court staff looked at her with surprise. She didn't look like the kind of woman who would bring down a powerful man. But that's the thing. Omari thought the same. He thought she was just a shadow in his world. A silent partner. A woman who wouldn't fight. But now, she was the one putting everything in motion. As she limped out of the courthouse, the crutch firm under her arm, she felt taller than ever. The pain in her body hadn't gone, but the weight in her heart was lighter. She had taken the first step, and it was a big one. She had turned her pain into purpose. Her silence into power. And she wasn't done yet. That night, she stood in front of a mirror and looked at herself. Not as a victim. Not as a broken wife. But as a woman who had chosen to rise. She had carried her bruises into court like medals. She had walked in with a crutch but walked out with courage. Omari had tried to silence her with fear. But instead, he gave her the fire to speak louder than ever before. And the world was finally going to listen. Omari sat outside his house that morning, calm and full of pride. He was dressed in his cleanest shirt, sipping hot tea like nothing could ever touch him. He had heard whispers that Zalika had gone to the courthouse. That she was walking again, even if it was with a crutch. That she had given something to a lawyer. But Omari just laughed. Let her try, he told his sister, who sat nearby. She's just a woman. She'll cry a little, then come back. They always do. He truly believed it. He had lied for so long and gotten away with everything. Why would this time be any different? But just before noon, a police car pulled into the compound. Omari didn't even stand up. He stayed in his chair and took another slow sip of his tea. 3 officers stepped out and walked toward him. Omari smirked, pretending to be confused. Officers, what brings you here? He asked, acting like he had nothing to hide. He thought this was some mistake, maybe a warning. He was still so sure of his power, so sure of himself. Then one of the officers, a tall man with a serious face, stepped forward and said, "Are you Mr. Omari Abasai?" Omari nodded. "Yes, what's the problem?" The officer didn't wait. "You are under arrest," he said. "On behalf of the Republic and Mrs. Zalika Omari." Everything stopped. Omari blinked. He laughed a little, thinking it was a joke. "Wait, what did you say?" he asked. But the officer repeated it, louder this time. "On behalf of Mrs. Zalika Omari, you are under arrest." That was the moment Omari's smile dropped. His mouth opened like he wanted to say something, but nothing came out. His hands started to shake. "You think I'd go down because of a woman?" he said angrily. But it was too late. The other officers began reading the charges: fraud, forgery, identity theft, abuse. They pulled out a thick file full of documents, real proof. Bank records, land papers, emails, even printed conversations between him and the politician from Nsukka. All tied to Zalika's name. All copied from the USB she had secretly taken. All now part of the official case. Omari's voice cracked. "She's framing me. She's bitter. This is revenge." But no one cared. The officers moved in and put the handcuffs on his wrists. His sister watched in silence, her face pale. She didn't speak. She didn't move. She knew this was serious. As they walked him to the car, the neighbors began to gather, whispering to each other. Some were shocked, but many weren't. They had seen Zalika's bruises. They had heard the fights. Now, they were seeing the truth. From a distance, behind a gate, Zalika stood and watched. She didn't shout or cry. She didn't smile either. She just stood tall. She had once fallen at his feet, kicked down the stairs like she was nothing. Now, it was her name, her voice, that had brought the law to his door. Omari had laughed when they arrived. But by the time they drove away, he wasn't laughing anymore. Omari's world fell apart quickly. Once the case went public, there was no hiding anymore. The evidence was too strong, too clear. His name, once feared and respected in the neighborhood, became a joke. He lost his business license, his political connections vanished, and even his own family turned their backs on him. People no longer called him boss, they whispered behind his back or crossed the street to avoid him. He was no longer the powerful man he once believed he was. His lies had finally caught up with him. But while Omari lost everything, Zalika was rising. She used the compensation money from the court to buy back the very house he had once kicked her out of. But she didn't stop there. Zalika turned the front rooms into something powerful, a safe space for women just like her. She called it Zalika's Safe Haven, a small center where abused women could rest, recover, and rebuild. Every piece of furniture, every warm meal, every bed in that home was a quiet message. You are not alone. One evening, Zalika stood at the top of the same stairs where Omari had once kicked her down. The sun was setting, and the house was filled with soft laughter and calm voices. She looked down at those steps, remembering the pain, the fear, and the fall. But this time, she smiled. A quiet, strong smile. "You kicked me down," she whispered, "but I came back holding the truth." And this time, she stood taller than ever.